I'd say
I want to see
dolls
some
are probably the
photos of that
creepiest. Dolls are definitely
Right.
the creepiest things to find.
You ever
And
find
sometimes you
clowns?
find more personalized items that are kind of creepy too.
Right.
I've never found any clowns. Just that one head. It was an older jester style, like where they used to entertain the kings and stuff.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I know one of your auctions, I managed to score the little creepy bunny with the weird eyes.
Oh yeah, the bunny. That was
Yeah.
another creepy find.
I remember you were like, "This is just so weird," and I'm like, "Yes, I must own that." We do have people. So when you're talking personal, we have someone asking. Bill in chat has asked, "Any false teeth?"
Yes, I have dug quite a few false teeth, but never with the teeth in them. I saw Teresa Treasure Hunter posted a picture to me the other day on the Messenger, and she found some that had all the teeth intact, real pretty. All the ones I find, they've been ripped out.
Yeah, I've never found any with teeth in it. I found teeth separate, but the dentures or whatever they are never had any teeth in them.
I've never found any people teeth, but I found a petrified horse tooth that was super, super old. And I've found really unique personal items. I'd say the most personal thing that I have dug was a dice from a Civil War soldier that was made out of a musket ball.
Oh,
and
that's
they used
cool.
a square nail to make the different numbers on it.
Wow.
Yeah, I still have it. It's really, really neat. And I dug it up near Antietam Battlefield on a really very strict private permission that me and my buddy Wayne have. And it has been hit hard. A lot of the stuff around that area has. But the good old Nocta, that's what I use, the Nocta Impact Pro. It's a British metal detector, but it is sweet. I love it. It goes down really deep too.
Awesome. Well, we were talking about creepy. We had another question, or someone wanted to ask you about voices in the haunted dump.
Yeah, it was never really determined. It was never really determined what the voice actually said. I've had a couple paranormal people reach out to me and tell me that was one of the clearest EVP readings they've ever heard in their life. But it was very unexpected. We weren't, looking for anything to happen like that. We were just recording a dig, and somehow this crazy voice came out of the phone. Didn't happen at the time we were doing the recording, so if you watch the video, you can see there was pretty much no reaction from anybody. But when we were later editing it and listening back, oh, it was crazy. It froze us dead in our tracks. And, of course, it made for a very awesome video. I mean, the finds on that day, the finds were very unique, too. I mean, a lot of the finds were extremely valuable stuff. It was just one of those crazy days.
Wow. Interesting. What did the voice, what did they say it said?
A lot of them said that they were interested by what we were doing. So they were saying like, they're attracted by the trash, or some of them were saying the devil's attractive. It was saying a lot of them were leading towards something being attractive or us being attracted to something. It was like intrigued kind of by what we were doing, I guess. And there are, believe it or not, on some of these finds, you can kind of feel like some crazy energy, like those seed beads that I pulled out of the Privy Dip dump in a couple videos ago, those little vials. Now, when I brought those home, I dumped them out to clean them. And as soon as I did so, it felt like somebody was stabbing me in my back. Like it hurt real bad. And I was like, hold up. I was like, I'm not throwing these away. I'm just going to clean them. I'm going to put them back in the vials. And I made sure to tell
wrapped up in that.
I made sure to tell my customers that at the auction when I was, auctioning them off, just to be careful when they dump them out or if they decided to do something with them. You just never know, what's tied to that particular item. It's crazy to think about it, but I've had bottles jump out the window sill. I've had relics go across the room and smack people in their arm that was standing there talking to me. And a lot of it could be tied to where I live. I live in an old brothel house from the 1880s, 1890s. All the kids have outside the doors, like go out into the hallways from the bedrooms. So it's still set up like the old saloon was. So, I mean, there could be stuff going on with that too. But yeah, a mixture of bringing in all these antiques and stuff is some of it has not got very good energy.
All kinds of energy. Yeah, after the podcast, I want to talk to you something else about that came up today, speaking with someone on the phone about the brothel. Anyway, we also had one more question, I think, in chat. Did you see it, Amanda?
I did not. Nope.
Or happen to see it? Okay. So we had a question, or somebody was curious if you ever had to have permits, with digging due to like underground lines and stuff like that.
No. I guess technically you're supposed to call the gas company or whatever if you're digging near a gas line, but most of that stuff is marked, with either utility poles or tape or some kind of markings. And out in the woods, you're not going to encounter that stuff at all anyway. Yes, when you're probing someone's yard, obviously you're responsible for anything that you do. So you definitely got to be careful. You got to watch for, lines and PVC pipes, even electrical, wires running for cables and stuff. But yeah, I've never had an incident where, something bad happened on somebody's property that I had to worry about that, knock on wood.
Yeah, I just did that for you too. I knocked for you.
I appreciate that. But yeah, I've never had to go about getting any kind of permit or nothing outside of just verbal permission.
Right. Yeah, you're like me. Most of those dumps or privies, a lot of them are old properties or out by, like, creek digger, by the creek or by the river where there's nothing like that usually, so you don't have to worry about it. It's where old dumping sites were, so there's not anything. And like you said, I just always try to pay attention to any kind of mark. The good thing is they'll have like a power line marking now and shows you the trajectory of where that line goes, so you can pretty much steer clear of any of that. So
yeah, and another thing I do, like right after I get the permission to dig a privy, I'll ask them, is there anything in the yard I need to worry about? Is there any lines that you know of anywhere?
Any dogs
where I need
buried.
to avoid? Well, a lot of times they will bury the pets in the privies, and the reason being that's the softest area in the yard. It's very fertile. The grass grows more lush. There's usually like lilac bushes growing. People put gardens on top of them. They're all good indicators. But yeah, a lot of times you dig animals in privies, and what I'll do is I'll set them aside, and they're usually not nowhere near as deep as the actual privy is. So when I'm done digging the privy out, I give them proper burial down at the bottom of the privy where they'll never be disturbed again.
I can imagine too, wild animals and stuff that fall in privies and wells and stuff like that and accidentally die too. I know that happens from time to time too. So I'm sure it's just like anything you come across, bones.
Yeah, and they used to eat, if the people that were not very wealthy that couldn't afford meat, even though it was bad, they couldn't afford it. They ate rodents. They ate little birds and mice and rats. And you find those kind of bones and skulls and stuff in the privies too. But that's not usually a good sign, and usually not very good bottles in those privies. You want to find the big soup bones and the nice ironstone china pieces and all that. That's what you're looking for.
All the fancy stuff.
Yeah, the wealthy. And you never know. I mean, every privy pretty much looks the same until you dig it. You don't know the age of it. You don't know if the person had money. You can look at the house if it's still standing and kind of try to determine, well, that's a fairly big house, so they probably had money. But not necessarily. A lot of times they were orphanages, or they were like really poor kind of churches or boarding houses, things like that trained like the coal miners and the people that worked on the railroads and stuff like that. They didn't have a whole lot.
So
you just never know till you dig it. All right.
You really never know. I'm curious, what's the deepest privy or hole you've ever dug?
30 feet.
30
feet. We did a saloon privy. Yeah, it was a privy. Wow. It was a saloon privy. And we ended up having to have a tripod over top the hole. It was like a 5-person operation. One person was down in the hole digging, filling buckets. One person was pulling the buckets up. One person was getting the buckets, putting them in the trash cans. One person was arranging, because we used 50-gallon trash cans in like single file lines to not have to use a tarp, because when you dig that big, the pile was just crazy. And the trash cans are a lot better cleanup too. You don't have to worry about any dirt at all getting in the yard pretty much. The bad part about it is you can't sift anything. You can't hit it with the metal detector, because it's all in the barrels. And then they take it and dump it right back in the hole. So there is drawbacks about doing it that way too. But yeah, it was 30 feet deep. We pulled hundreds and hundreds of bottles. Nothing crazy, but it was a very awesome experience, and my biggest brick liner I've ever done.
Wow. I think we had a few other questions in chat real quick. Did you see them?
John, FLX Detectorist, wanted to know, how many privies per site would you say for a site that's 1850s to 1920s?
That's a real good question. So normally about every 10 to 20 years is when they would completely fill in the privy. And basically they would just move the building over to the next hole that they dug. And they would only usually go a couple feet. So on a 1840s, 1850s permission, you normally find 3 to 4 privies, sometimes more. They also had what's called summer and winter privies. So in the colder climate places, the winter privies are a lot closer to the house, sometimes almost touching the house. And then the summer privies are out on the edge of the property lines. So on those sites that have summer and winter privies, you might find 7 or 8 privies in one yard.
Wow.
Do you find that the summer privies have lilacs or any type of floral next to them?
Yeah, most of the privies either have a depression or something growing on top of them. Usually it's just the area looks better, looks greener, looks more lush. The things are growing just a little bit better around that area. Usually. Not all the time. Sometimes they're covered up by patios, walkways, garages, all kinds of stuff.
That's crazy. Yeah, I'd been told that the summer privies would have lilacs near them to help cut the scent in the summer, so you wouldn't have to smell them. But the winter privies, geez, up here, I'm sure then there's a whole bunch in the different areas and real close.
Right. I've got another question for you, Travis. I was thinking, usually it's you and maybe somebody else. What's the long, I know you had quite a team with the 30-foot, but about how long does it take, if you could tell our listeners, to dig out a privy and thoroughly search it? I guess it
So